All right, so today I'm here with myself and Kahed from WPGN, and we have Millie here, and we're going to do an interview. Say hi.
Hello.
All right, today's topic is something that I'd come across a little earlier, and that is this person named Anita Sarkeesian. Sarkeesian? Something like that. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. But we're not going to talk about her because the last thing that I want is, for this to look like an attack on her, and that's not it at all. This is just what spurred this idea for these interviews and whatnot. So today we're going to talk about games, and I wanted to ask someone of the female persuasion that also takes part in playing video games what their thoughts on some of these things were. So I guess first, what type of games do you like to play?
Anything. Shoot 'em up and RPGs. MMORPGs, mostly.
An MMO fan.
Yes.
After my own heart, obviously. Alright, now I think it's safe to say that in a majority of games today, there is at least a certain level of violence.
Oh, yeah.
Um, maybe not a whole lot in some other games, but there is a level of violence to a certain degree in most of games that are produced today. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Um, and some of those games is more prevalent than others. I know like a very popular game, even today, even though it's had a little less popularity coming up through the years, is World of Warcraft. And there is a certain amount of violence in there, maybe not a whole lot of blood and gore, but it's still there. So that'd be maybe on the lower end of the violence pole, I guess you could say.
Oh, yeah.
And then we have games like Grand Theft Auto, which it is a very violent game, but it is entirely possible to go through a majority of the game without actually having to be that violent. It's a choice. But anyhow, so tell me, in the games that you've played over the course of your life, would you say that any of them has necessarily led you to be a more violent person?
No. No.
Or inspired you to go on a shooting spree or any of the ridiculous things that we hear about on the news these days?
Absolutely not. Gaming these days and growing up is just, it is a release. It's not anything that even comes to mind of doing in person. It's just fun.
Sure. I mean, I think most of today's youth, even up through the older generations, when they sit down to play a game, they're not thinking, "Oh well, I'm gonna let this game teach me how to be a violent criminal." I don't think that's the motive there.
No. I mean, that sort of violence doesn't come from just playing games. It's a large number of things that contribute to that sort of thing.
Sure. And I mean, while we could get into that and might get into that in a later episode, that would take us all day to talk about.
Yeah.
At the risk of pissing a lot of people off, which isn't our goal here. Um, Another thing that I wanted to ask you is your opinion on some of these things that Miss Anita had said. She claims to be the representative of females and female gamers. What do you think about that?
Personally, that's crap because she's not asking every single female gamer or female in general for what she's trying to put out there. You've got to actually ask. Interview more than just the people who are the same minded as yourself. Not everybody thinks the same as you.
Sure. I mean, there's going to be differing opinions.
I don't particularly like where she's going, and that's coming from being a gamer myself and playing a lot of, well, what you'd class as a violent game these days, sort of things. I don't get what she's getting at there, because it's not true, not for everyone.
Well, and I think it's very, and I know that if she ever watches this video or anybody that supports her watches this video, I know that she or they are going to immediately discount me because I'm a guy. But I think that it would be relatively safe to say that she's being very presumptuous uh, when she labels herself the voice of females or female gamers.
Yeah, because she's not actually really getting the voice from everyone else. It's just from a certain amount or
It's
certain people.
pretty much just her opinions.
Yeah, yeah. Which is not exactly how you do things when you're trying to fight something like that.
And don't get me wrong, everybody is entitled to their own opinion, and that's fine. But I personally think that she's taking this a little far.
Yes, I'd have to agree with you there. It's definitely going a bit too far. You can't expect what she's asking or doing when she's only got her own opinion to go on, not everybody else's.
And one of the other things that I wanted to ask your opinion on, since you are female and you are a female that plays games, I
Hmm.
wanted to ask you because one of the things that she had made a quite a large deal about is the fact that she thinks that there's too much violence against females in particular in games. I wanted to ask what you thought about that.
I think she's wrong. I don't think so. I mean, granted, I play a lot of games and I've watched a lot of games being played, either on YouTube videos or even around me. She, there's not a lot of the violence is guy versus guy, or even sometimes female versus bashing up some dude. There, it's very little female violence there. Against females, sort of thing. I don't get where she's going
Well, I
with
know that
that.
one of the games that was in the spotlight for her on this particular subject was Grand Theft Auto 5. Um, and I have played it, and I do know that, what she says about being able to seduce a prostitute and then have the ability to kill said prostitute afterwards is there. That is true. That is in the game, but I don't particularly feel that that was necessarily put there to single out women and say this is what we should treat them like. I don't think that was the message at all.
I don't believe so. It's a game. That's the bottom line. It's a game. Um, when you really think about it, it's you know there are prostitutes out there. We all know that.
Sure, happens.
We all know that. Um, there's a lot of women that do die in real life of certain you know things like rape and murder and all that crap mixed in together. But that doesn't mean that people who play, say, Grand Theft Auto 5, as you're saying, or any of the Grand Theft Autos, are going to go out and do it in person, because it's just a game. It's
And there
based.
have been counts where people have committed acts of a violent nature and did say something in the regards of, well, this happened because of a video game. And personally, I think that they say that because it's a cop out for them.
They say that because it's their way of saying, well, it's not my fault, I did it.
Hmm.
It's their defense. and saying, well, I did this because I can do it on here on a game. I can do it in person too. But when it's not true, everybody has a choice. You choose to do something bad like that to someone, regardless of what you do.
Mm.
It's your choice. You can't
Yeah,
blame that.
there's nothing forcing you to do it. You choose
Exactly.
to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's very unfortunate. The victims of those crimes certainly don't deserve it.
Absolutely not.
But I think it's a farce to try and blame that on something that is made to be fiction.
I agree.
Basically, I think what that boils down to is either the person is unable to tell the difference between fantasy and reality, or they just don't care.
They don't care. They're sadistic kind of thoughts that they, there's people out there that have always had that sort of a streak in them.
Sure.
They play a game, they can live it out, but then they realize, wow, I know how I can do this in a game. Maybe I can get away with it in person.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've unleashed a tornado. But it's a
Well,
tornado that's
and
been
even
sitting there.
even though that streak is there, and the game certainly provides them with a tool, I guess you could say, the
Mhm.
real thing to blame there is the person themselves and the influences in their life.
It's not necessarily the game. Well, it's not really the game maker's fault.
No, absolutely
It's the
not.
person who's playing the game who's at fault because they're the ones that get the ideas, they're the ones that make the wrong choice.
I could go out, buy a brick, and kill 5 people with a brick, but that doesn't make it the brick's fault. That makes it
No,
my fault.
yes, it was your choice to go and buy a brick and hit it at 5 people.
That leads back. This roots into so many other things like gun control and gun safety and all of that kind of stuff. People always want to blame the tool. Yes, guns are capable of killing people, but a gun can't kill somebody without somebody
Somebody actually
being
pulling the
behind
trigger.
the gun. Exactly. Guns don't kill
Someone has
people, people kill people.
that. The gun is just the tool in the
It's
means of
just a
someone killing
device,
someone.
exactly. And anything can be used like that. I could take the stylus to my art tablet and go stab somebody in the neck with it, and suddenly it goes from being an innocent piece of technology to a murder weapon.
Just like that.
So you can do anything like
With him.
that. But I don't believe that their intention behind putting that kind of stuff in the game was to give out the message that females should be treated this way or that it's okay to do this type of thing. I think they were going for a realism aspect of the fact that that kind of thing does happen. But it's a game. You can
It,
choose whether you want to engage in it or not.
yep.
Um, and just like the other thing is, okay, if you don't like that particular game or the elements of the game, don't play it.
It says R18 for a reason on games. If you don't like the fact, like you could be, you know, 25, 26, something silly like that. It says R18. It says sexual content or violence. If you don't like that sort of thing, don't play it. Don't buy it.
Exactly. Now, here's something that I wanted to ask you about pertaining to her. She claims herself to be a game critic, and that would suggest the fact that she knows a lot about games, that she's played a lot of games. Okay, in the sense that I do game reviews, I do let's plays, I talk about games because through the course of my life I have played thousands of games. I have the right to call myself a game critic because I have played these games, I know what they're like, and I talk about them. Now, this has not been the case with her up until she started to do this whole campaign shenagle. She didn't play any games, she didn't do any game coverage, yet she's claiming herself to be a critic of games. What do you think about that?
Um, that's what the hell? How can you criticize games if you're not really a gamer
I
or
mean, to
never
me,
really?
that seems like going in for a job interview at a bar to be a bartender, saying that you know how to mix drinks and know in reality nothing about how to mix drinks. So you're
Yeah,
basically lying to get the job.
yeah. That. What the hell is she doing?
I don't understand that at all. I mean, usually if you're going to be a critic of a particular,
Topic.
I don't want to say community, but if you're going to be a critic of a particular thing or group of things, you need to know what you're talking about when you talk about them.
Well, yeah, that's logic.
That way, all of your claims are based in fact rather than seeing it on a screen because somebody else is playing it or just buying the game, playing it a couple of times, and oh well, this is what I think about this.
You, that doesn't work. It really doesn't work. You need to, as you see, I could be a game critic if was so inclined to do so, because I've played games for many many years and know a thing or two on what to look for, what's cool, what's not cool, what can be improved in games, and etc. etc.
Sure.
I can, and but that's because I've had the experience of playing games. If she's saying that and she's not typically a gamer, not really played the game for, say, playing a game for a couple of years and then decide, okay, well, this is not going to take WoW, for example.
Sure.
This shit I could say about that. Um,
Yeah.
and and I will. It 5 months, and I went from one to the current level of 100
Mhm.
and was bored. The game hadn't improved. I went through all the different stages, different areas, which is, all the different expansions and everything. And by the end, I was so bored that I cancelled my subscription.
Well, and see, at least at that point, you would have the right to say, well, I don't like this game because X, Y, and Z, or I do like this game
Exactly.
because X, Y, and Z,
Because
because
I
you had
played right
spent
through.
that amount of time playing it, at least, at that point in its life, and you would be more than entitled to talk about the things that were going on at that point in that game's life because you were there.
Hmm. Exactly. What I'm saying, she can't criticize something she hasn't played for any length of time,
Hmm.
or she can't speak for other people like myself who enjoy playing games, whether they are violent towards women or violence towards men. A game is a game, whether you shoot them up or what have you.
And I really don't understand what her angle on this is, because there's so many things that she said and done. She claims to be a feminist, claims that her whole argument that she's campaigning about is the fact that there's too much violence towards women in video games. Then claims that she's the voice of female gamers and so on and so forth. And it almost feels like a Donald Trump style approach to whatever outcome she's hoping to get from this. I mean, let's look at it. I mean, the reason I say that is because Donald Trump is a very wealthy man, but he's not necessarily a very intelligent man.
Yeah.
He made a lot of money on real estate back in the day, and he's done well in managing to hold on to that revenue. but at the same time, like, he's currently running for president, by the way, if you weren't aware of that.
I had heard that, and I was quite surprised at that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that's not happy about that. But let's look at the traits that Donald Trump possesses, and then I will explain why I'm comparing the two campaigns here. You know, you have Donald Trump, very wealthy man, is not bad at managing money, is not bad at making money. Yet, the way that he carries himself just makes him so impersonable. I mean, people don't like him. He has been sexist towards women in a number of his statements. He's currently running for president, but he doesn't really know anything about the presidency. He the first part of his campaign was talking about how he wanted to get rid of all the immigrants and this, that, and the other, and then he switched views on that because it wasn't landing him enough, ratings or followers or whatever they call that, uh, you know. So he switched views on that to say, oh, well, I'm going to propose tax cuts, which automatically gets people's attention because people don't like paying taxes, and that's understandable, but he doesn't really know what he's talking about, and that's why I compare the two of these campaigns, is because
Because she
she's
doesn't.
trying to convince people that there's too much violence in the video game world, especially towards females, but at the same time, she doesn't really seem to know what she's talking about, and she's misrepresenting a very, very large community, and that's why I correlate the two of those.
Because he's doing the exact same thing, but in politics.
Uh-huh.
It's not going to work for her because this is just, she's going to fight it. I can, by the
Oh, sure.
sound of it, she's going to fight it really, really hard. But more people like myself need to stand up for what we believe in. You
And
know,
exactly, that's the point of this interview, is through all of this research and reading and watching videos that I'd done, I'd never seen any female persons or female gamers, share their thoughts, and that's what I wanted to do because you guys are who she's claiming to represent. So I figured it would be good to get your guys' voice and figure out what you had to say about it.
fair enough. Fair enough. And yeah, shit.
And this isn't me, this isn't about me going, oh, well, she's just trying to be angry and angsty and whatever. No, that's not it. I mean, I agree, there is a lot of violence in video games, and if she actually wants to get something done about it, this is not the right way to go about it.
Well, exactly. I mean, and there are a lot of games that, yes, they have violence, but some games you don't actually have to go down that path.
No, no, you have a choice.
Yeah.
A lot
You
of
have a
games are
choice
like
how
that.
you play the game.
Just because it's there doesn't mean that you have to take part in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that she's clearly missing here is that, yes, there is violence in video games, but if people don't like it, people don't have to play it. If people want to play it, you can't tell them any differently.
No, no. If people want to buy GTA 5, and kill a prostitute,
Hmm.
that's their choice. It's a game. They're not doing. Be thankful they're doing it in a game and not out there on the street doing it for real.
Exactly.
Simple as that.
And with all of the, propaganda about, oh, well, video games make people more violent and whatnot. And you know what? Some people, that may indeed be the case. I don't know. I haven't done a study on it or anything like that. But I can imagine that for some people, that may be true. However, if all of the people that played video games acted out what they did in video games, the world as we know it would really be screwed.
Yeah, you would not. Nowhere would be safe. Your own home would not be safe.
And that right there should be a testament to the fact that video games don't make people more violent in
Actually,
general.
I thinking about it, the way you've just put all that, video games are probably the only reason why that the world isn't like that.
Hmm.
Because people are getting it all out of their system playing a bloody game, which is great because I love if I'm really stressed out, I'll go and kill something
Sure. I
on the
mean,
game.
we all are prone to those tendencies. We're human beings. It's in our nature.
Hmm.
And I would rather have somebody playing COD than running down the middle of my street with an AR-33 assault rifle.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, I, I think that she's going about this in the completely wrong way. The
Yeah.
only thing she's going to get from doing things the way she has been is a lot of ire. She's gotten threats, death threats, and whatnot. Which let me say again, as I mentioned in an earlier conversation that wasn't recorded, I don't agree with that at all.
No.
All of you gamers out there, and I'm going to point towards the camera because you're watching this. I'm going to shake my finger, like an old 90-year-old man. All of you gamers out there that feel passionately enough to send a death threat, you're fucking wrong. I understand you may not like where she's coming from or where people are coming from, but what you're doing when you send a threat like that is a federal offense. It's wrong. You don't have the right to do that. They're entitled to their opinions, we're entitled to ours, but what you're not entitled to is to say something like, oh, well, in quote, I'm going to slit your throat in front of your children, quote. You can't say that. You don't have the right to say that. That's wrong. And anybody
That's
who does that should be ashamed of themselves. And it makes me sad to consider the thought that you are part of a community that I grew up in. You should be ashamed of yourselves for doing anything like that.
a threat's a threat, regardless what it is and how you've put it across. A threat's a threat. There's nothing okay about a threat.
And I hope that eventually every one of you that has sent messages like that to this lady, I hope you get caught and I hope you do your time because that's not cool.
No.
But anyway, I think that's pretty much what I'd wanted to
Covers.
cover. If there's anything else that you'd like to make a note of.
No, I think we pretty covered that pretty good.
Okay. Well, again, this is N. Cahet with WPGN speaking with Millie, and this was a interview spurred by the Anita Sarkeesian campaign. I hope that somehow this makes it to her and she understands that some things have got to change. But other than that, have a good night. Like, subscribe, do whatever you're going to do, and peace out.
Thank you very much. Later.